As one of the episodes in the animated series formerly on Nickelodeon, Hey Arnold, Full Moon is one of the most controversial but iconic in the series in general because it depicts Harold, Sticky, and Sid anonymously exposing themselves to Principal Wirtz and leaving Arnold to take the fall for it as an accomplice to the crude prank. While he refuses to sell out the guys to protect their identities and reputations, Wirtz gives Arnold 2 weeks of detention for refusal to cooperate and for so-called involvement in the act of heartless humor. He also threatens that if Arnold fails to cooperate at the end of the 2 weeks of detention he has, Wirtz will put it on his permanent record, following him all the way beyond junior high middle school. Fortunately, in the end, Harold, Sticky, and Sid confess sorrowfully that they're the ones who've pranked Wirtz and assure the principal that Arnold has nothing to do with it. So Wirtz leaves Arnold off the hook for now, but puts what the guys have done on their permanent records instead. It's one of the famed episodes next to Baby Oscar and On the Lam, mainly because while the three guys seemingly get away with showing their bare behinds to Wirtz out of humorous pranking, only to have Arnold take the blame for it as an accomplice, despite that he knew of the prank priorly firsthand but had nothing to do with it. They mournfully confessed their deviant deed in the end, pardoning Arnold of the prank. However, there are some people in my age group that may not find this age appropriate for younger viewers' children, because the guys definitely give Wirtz a literal full moon as they're wearing masks to conceal their identities after hearing of some of the older students doing this prank themselves. Furthermore, it's not only episode in the series that the three guys try to evade social justice and leave Arnold to take the fall for their involvement. Compared to all this, in the episode on the Lam, Arnold's friends Harold, Sticky, and Sid thieve a few rockets and their ingredients from their teacher, Mr. Simmons, with the exception of Sticky's Louisiana hot sauce, which he brought himself, to launch them, leading to the destruction of an old and vacant police station, which they believe they've detonated with the cops inside. Unknown to them, it's Ernie, one of Arnold's boarding house neighbors, who's blown up the building due to it being slated for demolition months prior. They also leave Arnold alternately to take the fall for their so-called dark deed by detaining him in his basement via rope and duct tape as the guys set off on the land to escape to the train yard and become hobos, disguised as random citizens. It doesn't last when the truth is exposed to the guys following a brief chase through the train yard by the cops and others, but they're slightly penalized for thieving Mr. Simmons' science closet after school in advance, because Simmons said he will discuss with the guys a fair and decent punishment in the morning. Back to Full Moon, Wirtz may not sometimes be a good guy when it comes to his students like Arnold, but most of the time he is kind-hearted and lenient toward Harold, Sid, and Sticky when they confess their indecent but humorous act of pranking him in the first place, and he gives them a minor penalty of this being on their permanent record, rather than Arnold, even though it is to follow them beyond middle school. Wirtz is not always the main villain of an episode of Hey Arnold, as he's not in Full Moon. He's just enforcing the policies of PS 118, grade school, just a bit too much. For instance, unlike in Full Moon, he suspends Harold for not only insulting him by dirty name, but also defying his suspension multiple times between impersonating a pizza delivery guy and trying to dig his way back into school. To make matters worse, he coldly expels Arnold from school for standing up for Harold. Gladly, the two are reinstated into school in the end. Full Moon may depict some indecent content on its own, mostly mooning Wirtz out of humorful pranking, but the one thing that it morally has taught me is to not go too far with pranking an authority figure, like a principal, no matter how humorous it is. Otherwise, it could really go on your permanent record, resulting in your bad school rep following you until after high school, but it doesn't apply to college in reality. Finally, I believe that overall, Harold, Sticky, and Sid in the episode of Hey Arnold have chosen wisely to entertain us through fictionalized adult-like humor and delinquency when they had mooned Principal Wirtz in that moon meant regardless of the age and decency it has among younger audiences. Thanks for stopping by.